I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who'd find her marriage crumbling over a casserole dish. But there I was, 43 years old, standing in my meticulously organized kitchen at 2 in the morning, staring at the remnants of the chicken tetrazzini nobody had eaten at dinner. Michael had pushed his plate away after 3 bites. Our daughter Emma had excused herself to study. And I'd sat there alone at our farmhouse table, the one we'd refinished together 15 years ago, watching the steam rise off a meal I'd spent 2 hours preparing. That's when I knew. Not suspected, knew. The way you know when you find a lump or hear a certain tone in the doctor's voice. The kind of knowing that sits heavy in your stomach and makes the room tilt slightly on its axis. We'd been married for 19 years. 19 years of mortgages and parent-teacher conferences and arguing about whose turn it was to deal with the leaky faucet in the guest bathroom. We weren't unhappy, exactly. We were just elsewhere, living parallel lives in the same house, like roommates who occasionally had awkward sex and split the utility bills. I met Michael in 1985, back when big hair was still aspirational and smoking sections existed in restaurants. I was 24, working as a secretary at a law firm in downtown Minneapolis, and he was the new associate who always said please and thank you when I brought him his coffee. In an office full of men who treated me like an extension of the Xerox machine, that basic human decency felt revolutionary. Our first date was at a Thai restaurant that no longer exists, replaced now by one of those overpriced juice bars where everything costs $12 and tastes like grass clippings. He wore a tie I'd later learn was the only nice one he owned. I wore my mother's pearls and a dress I'd charged on a credit card I couldn't afford. We talked about books. He loved Hemingway, I preferred Wharton, and discovered we both had dog-eared copies of To Kill a Mockingbird with the same passages underlined. "Do you think Scout ever forgave her father?" he'd asked, twirling pad thai around his fork. "For what?" I'd been genuinely confused. For letting her see all that darkness so young, for not protecting her from knowing how cruel people could be. I'd fallen a little bit in love with him right then, this earnest man who asked questions like that over dinner, who saw the world as something worth examining rather than just surviving. We got married in June of '86, a modest ceremony at my parents' church in St. Paul. Nothing fancy. We couldn't afford fancy, but my mother had made my dress, and Michael's sister had done the flowers from her garden. During our vows, Michael's voice cracked on the word cherish, and I'd squeezed his hand so hard I left little half-moon imprints from my nails. For years, we were good. We were that couple other people envied at dinner parties. We finished each other's sentences and had inside jokes nobody else understood. When Emma was born in '89, Michael cried harder than I did, holding our daughter like she was made of spun glass and wonder. But somewhere along the way, I can't pinpoint exactly when, we stopped being Michael and Catherine and became Mom and Dad. Then Michael the attorney and Catherine the PTA president. Then just 2 people who happened to share an address and a filing status. The casserole incident wasn't our first sign of trouble. There'd been others, smaller fractures I'd explained away. The way he'd started working later and later until late became missed dinner entirely. The way he'd stopped asking about my day beyond a perfunctory, "How was it?" that didn't really want an answer. The way we'd started sleeping on opposite sides of our king-sized bed, a demilitarized zone of Egyptian cotton between us. But what bothered me most, what kept me up that night staring at congealed cheese sauce, was that I couldn't remember the last time I'd actually missed him. Not missed his presence at the dinner table or his half of the mortgage payment, but missed him. Michael, the man who'd once stayed up all night reading aloud to me when I had the flu, doing different voices for all the characters in The Princess Bride. The next morning, I found him in his study, already dressed for work though it was barely 6:30. He was drinking coffee from the mug Emma had made him in 3rd grade pottery class, the one that said, "World's One Dad" in wonky letters. "We need to talk," I said from the doorway. He didn't look up from whatever document he was reviewing. "Can it wait? I've got an early meeting." "You always have an early meeting." That got his attention. He set down his coffee and for the first time in months really looked at me. I saw surprise flicker across his face, as if he'd forgotten what I looked like, or maybe he was just startled to find me there at all. "Catherine," he said my name carefully, the way you'd speak to a skittish animal. "What's wrong?" Where to even start? The uneaten dinners, the separate lives, the fact that I'd started sleeping in the guest room 3 weeks ago and he hadn't noticed. I'd been testing him, I realized, waiting to see how long it would take for him to ask why his wife no longer slept beside him. The answer, apparently, was indefinitely. "Are you happy?" I asked instead. He blinked. "What kind of question is that?" "The kind that deserves an honest answer." Michael leaned back in his chair, and I watched him choose his words the way he always did, carefully constructing his argument before presenting it. Lawyer brain. It was one of the things that had attracted me to him once, his measured thoughtfulness. Now it just felt like stalling. "I'm not unhappy," he finally said. "That's not the same thing." "Catherine, what do you want me to say? That every day is magical? We're adults, we have responsibilities." "This is what marriage looks like." "No," I said quietly. "This is what our marriage looks like, and I'm not sure I recognize it anymore." He stood then, buttoning his suit jacket in that precise way he had. "I don't have time for this right now. We can talk tonight. We won't, though. We never do." Something in my voice must have caught him because he paused. "Are you asking for a divorce?" The question hung in the air between us like smoke. Was I? I hadn't let myself think the word, but now that he'd said it, I couldn't unhear it. "I don't know," I admitted. "I'm asking if you've even noticed that we're strangers living in the same house." "I'm asking if it bothers you that your wife moved into the guest room and you didn't even register it. I'm asking," my voice cracked. "I'm asking if you even care." For a long moment, Michael just stood there, and I saw something I hadn't seen in years cross his face. Not anger or defensiveness, but genuine pain. "Of course I care," he said softly. "Catherine, he stopped, seemed to recalibrate. "Look, I know things haven't been great. I know I've been distant. Work has been insane, and it's always something," I interrupted. "Work is insane. Emma needs us. The house needs fixing. We're tired." "We've been making excuses for years, Michael. At what point do we admit that maybe the excuses are the point? That we're hiding behind them because it's easier than admitting we're not happy?" "You're not happy," he corrected. "Don't put words in my mouth." "Fine, I'm not happy. Are you satisfied with that?" He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw my husband for the first time in what felt like forever. Not the idea of him, not the role he played, but Michael, the man who'd cried at our daughter's birth, who'd held me when my father died, who'd promised to cherish me all those years ago in that little church with my mother's dress and his cracking voice. "No," he said finally, "I'm not satisfied with that at all." We didn't fix things that day, or that week, or even that month, but we started talking. Really talking the way we hadn't in years. It was awful and uncomfortable and necessary, like lancing a wound that had been festering for too long. What I learned, what we both learned, was that neither of us had been particularly innocent in the slow dissolution of our marriage. Yes, Michael had been distant and checked out. But I'd been martyring myself, keeping score of every unnoticed meal and unappreciated effort, building a case against him instead of actually communicating. I'd been so busy being the perfect wife on paper that I'd forgotten to be an actual partner. "You never ask me for help," Michael said during one of our late-night kitchen conversations. We'd started meeting there after Emma went to bed, sitting across from each other at that refinished farmhouse table with cups of tea neither of us really wanted. "I shouldn't have to ask. You live here too. But you make it seem like you've got everything handled, like you don't need me for anything except a paycheck." That stung, partially because there was truth in it. I'd been so determined to be capable, to manage everything myself, that I'd shut him out, and then I'd resented him for not fighting his way back in. I felt invisible, I admitted, like I was just the person who made sure the house ran smoothly and showed up to Emma's events. Like you'd replaced me with a very efficient household manager. "And I felt like I could never get it right," Michael countered. "Like no matter what I did, it wouldn't be good enough, so I stopped trying." We sat with that for a while, the weight of our mutual failures hanging between us. "I had coffee with Sarah Brennan last week," I said finally. Sarah was a friend from college I'd reconnected with recently. She got divorced 2 years ago. You know what she told me? She said the worst part wasn't the fighting or the lawyers or even splitting up their stuff. It was realizing she'd spent the last 5 years of her marriage not trying. Just going through the motions, waiting for things to either get better on their own or fall apart. Michael's jaw tightened. Is that what you want, a divorce? I want to know if we're just going through the motions, I said. Because if we are, then what's the point? Why stay married just to be unhappy? Because we made promises. His voice was fierce. Because we have a daughter. Because 19 years means something. Does it though, if we're both miserable? I'm not miserable, Michael said, then paused. Okay, maybe I am, a little, but Catherine, I still love you. That has to count for something. I looked at my husband across the table, this man I'd built a life with, and felt something crack open in my chest. Not breaking, opening. Like a door I'd kept locked finally getting some air. I love you too, I whispered. But I'm not sure love is enough anymore. Not if we can't figure out how to actually live together instead of just existing in the same space. The real breakthrough came 3 weeks later, in the most unlikely of places, Emma's high school band concert. We were sitting in those uncomfortable auditorium chairs, surrounded by other parents with their phones out to record, when Emma took the stage with her clarinet. She wasn't a natural musician. She'd taken it up because the school required it, not because she had any particular talent or passion. But watching her up there, concentrating so hard on hitting the right notes, I saw something I'd been missing. She was trying, really trying, not because she loved it, not because she was good at it, but because it mattered to her to get it right. Halfway through the third song, she squeaked a note badly enough that several people in the audience flinched. I saw Emma's face turn red, but she didn't stop playing. She just kept going, pushed through to the end. After the concert, we found her in the crowded hallway. She looked mortified. I totally butchered that D sharp, she said, close to tears. Everyone heard it. Michael put his hand on her shoulder. You know what I heard? I heard you keep playing. Most people would have stopped, but you pushed through. Emma looked up at him, surprised. Really? Really? That's not talent, kiddo, that's character. On the drive home, Michael and I were quiet. Emma had her earbuds in, oblivious in the backseat. At a red light, Michael reached over and took my hand. We're like Emma with that clarinet, he said. We're not naturally good at this anymore. Maybe we never were, but that doesn't mean we stopped playing. I looked at our intertwined fingers and thought about all the years, all the accumulated disappointments and small betrayals and moments of taking each other for granted. And then I thought about what it would mean to just keep playing, to try. I need you to actually be here, I said. Not just physically, but present. I need you to notice when I move into the guest room. I need you to eat the damn casserole, even if it's a little dry. I need you to tell me when you're unhappy, Michael countered. Not just let it build up until you resent everything I do, and I need you to let me fail sometimes without keeping a running tally. I can do that, I said. Can you? I can try. The light turned green. Michael squeezed my hand and drove us home. That was 8 months ago. We're not perfect now. We're probably never going to be perfect. We still argue about stupid things, and sometimes Michael still works late, and sometimes I still get frustrated when he loads the dishwasher wrong. But we're trying. Actively, consciously trying. We started seeing a marriage counselor, which felt both humiliating and necessary. Dr. Chen, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, told us something in our second session that stuck with me. Marriage isn't a destination. It's a practice. Like yoga or meditation, you don't do it once and declare yourself healed. You show up again and again, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Last week, I made chicken tetrazzini again. Michael ate 2 servings and asked for the recipe so he could make it when I was out of town for my mother's birthday. Emma actually put her phone away at dinner, and afterward, Michael did the dishes without being asked. Are we happy? I don't know if that's even the right question anymore. We're present. We're trying. We're relearning how to be Michael and Catherine instead of just mom and dad, roommates, strangers sharing a bed. Some nights, after Emma goes to sleep, Michael and I still sit at that farmhouse table and talk about things that matter. Books we're reading, dreams we'd forgotten we had, the people we used to be and the people we're trying to become. Last night, he asked me if I ever thought about what would have happened if we hadn't had that conversation 8 months ago. if I hadn't stood in his study doorway and asked if he was happy. Honestly, I said, I think we would have gotten divorced, maybe not right away, but eventually. Yeah, he agreed quietly, me too. We sat with that for a moment, the ghost of the ending we'd almost chosen. I'm glad we didn't, Michael said finally. Give up, I mean. Me too, and I meant it. Not because our marriage is perfect now, or because I've forgotten all the hurt and distance and years of existing in parallel, but because we're here, trying, showing up for each other even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. That's not the romantic ending I would have written for us at 24, drinking Thai food and talking about Scout Finch, but it's real. And maybe that's worth more than romance anyway. The choice to keep showing up, to keep trying, to keep playing the song even when you hit the wrong notes. I'm 44 now. Michael and I have been married for 19 and a half years, and for the first time in a long time, I'm not counting down to some imaginary finish line or waiting for things to magically improve. I'm just here, and so is he. That's enough.